Walking through the thunder, I'm going insane. The only thing that's holding me is space in the face.
Now, want to talk about Fambo Zhang, a Chinese star who Brooklyn brought in. And I think a lot of people probably are not familiar with Zhang. So a little background on him. He grew up in China. He moved to the States right before high school. He played 2 seasons of high school ball in Florida. And then his junior year was right after the COVID-19 pandemic starts. So he went back to China and didn't play his last 2 high school seasons. But he flashed a lot during those seasons. He was a 4-star recruit. He actually committed to Gonzaga, after the end of his high school career, and then decommitted from them and went to play for the G League Ignite. He signed an Exhibit 10 contract with the Pacers, I think, after he was with the Ignite, played for them at Summer League, but didn't end up sticking with them. And then he went back to China, and he's played the last 3 seasons with the Beijing Ducks in the CBA and has been impressive there. He's done some good things there. He averaged last season over 42 games with Beijing. He was at 15 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.6 blocks, shot 57, 41, 80 shooting splits. So good efficiency there. Last year, he struggled as a 3-point shooter with Ignite. And then over these last 3 seasons with Beijing, he's really developed into a high-level spot-up guy. He's at 38% on 5 attempts per game, and he's doing all of that as a 6'11" forward. So has really good size, has developed into a very efficient 3-point shooter on decently high volume. But, is a guy that obviously is playing in the CBA, which if you guys don't know that much about the CBA, it's not like a bad league by any stretch of the imagination, but is it at the level of, the Euro League? Is it at the level of some of the other leagues that we see, whether like the Bundesliga where Ben Saraf played or, whatever other leagues you want to talk about in Europe? I wouldn't say so. I've read some stuff about the CBA, and they have a cap on the number of imports that you could bring in. I think it's only 2 imports, so 2 non-Chinese player that can be on each team. So that obviously is going to limit the number, the amount of talent that can be in there relative to just a global stage or some of these other leagues are playing on. So Zhang's a guy that has really great size at 6'11", a little bit of a slighter frame. I think he's around like 200 pounds for reference. Like Nick Claxton's like 6'11", 215, 220. So Zhang has a little bit of a slighter frame, but really great height at power forward and has shot really well. And I think that that's intriguing, obviously, has also offered some rim protection. But I think the level of competition probably isn't where you're seeing a lot of these other guys played. And that might be a reason why he hasn't been picked up by an NBA team before that. But the Nets take a flyer on him. And if you watch some of the highlights, like this guy does have some pretty intriguing highlights in terms of transition dunks, in terms of blocks, obviously a high-level floor spacer for what I said with shooting 38.4% on 5 attempts over his last 3 seasons. If you watch, the highlights, there isn't a ton of stuff that he's doing outside of just being a floor spacer or just attacking closeouts off the dribble and really just being a straight line guy. Like there doesn't seem like there's a ton of ball handling ability. It doesn't seem like there's a ton of side to side shift, which along with, the lack of side to side shift, along with the slight frame defensively, I would think that might hamper him there. He's not playing against a lot of NBA level scorers, obviously over there in Beijing. So those could be some reasons that he hasn't come over yet. Also, he might just want to be a star in China and play over there. So, all of those factors contribute to it. But a guy who's 6'11", a guy who has above average athleticism, and a guy who shot over 38% from 3 on high volume over the last 3 seasons, it's nothing to like scoff at. It does sound like it could be an interesting flyer for the Nets. It also follows a pattern. Obviously, we know Joe Tsai has his connections to China, and we know that last year brought in Jackie Sway, and then they gave him he played in training camp, and then they gave him a 2-year 2-way deal, and they waived him in December when he tore his ACL. But now they bring in another Chinese star in Fambo Zhang. There has not been a ton of Chinese guys that have played in the NBA historically. I think Nets Daily put it out. I think the number is around 10 or 11 guys who have played. A few of those now have been with the Nets, with Yi Jianlian back in the day, Jackie Shui, as I said. And then now Nets bring in for the second straight training camp another Chinese star. And the Nets have an open 2-way spot. And, they have Tyson Etienne and Tosan Awolman on 2-way contracts. And some of these guys who are partially or non-guaranteed could be candidates for that two-way spot, like Ricky Council is a guy, if he's waived from his partially guaranteed deal, could sign a two-way spot. But Fambo Zhang, a guy who is eligible also to sign a two-way contract, obviously. And the Nets have one open spot there last season that went to Jackie Sway, another Chinese star who Brooklyn brought in. And this year, could Zhang be in that equation? It's definitely a possibility. And would it be a bad signing, based on things I've seen? Obviously, I'll have to dig into the tape a little bit more, but a 6'11" forward who is an above average athlete, as I said, and has shot well from three on high volume. That does sound like it's worth, a two-way flyer. And Fambo Zhang does have some youth, relative to these other guys. He's only 22 years old. So if we're talking about these other, back-end roster options that the Nets have, whether Ricky Council or Jalen Wilson or Tyrese Martin, Drew Timme, he's a couple years younger than those guys. He has the size, he has the measurables, he has the shooting, some things that some of those guys don't necessarily have, especially the shooting regard. So could be an intriguing flyer for the Nets. We'll see, but they make these two free agent signings and they are maxed out from the roster cap situation for training camp. Could they potentially make some moves and shuffle things around? Yes, but for now, the Nets have reached that limit, and it could be a sign of more moves to come because they may need to open some space